Talking this morning with David Bird, who is the clerk of the bankruptcy court in Delaware. And David, you've had long years of service in the bankruptcy court and also a long association with the NCBC. When did you first come to the bankruptcy court?
I came to the bankruptcy court in 1979 as a law clerk, and that was the first year that bankruptcy judges were allowed to have law clerks, so I was one of the first law clerks.
And from law clerk, how did you get into the clerk's office?
It was interesting. This was in Miami, Southern District of Florida, and the previous clerk had retired after 20 years, coincidentally when the new bankruptcy code came into existence. And the chief judge came to me and said, David, we know that you have an MBA and some business background. You have a law degree. Would you be interested in being the clerk of the court? I said, well, I really wanted to go into private practice. And he said, David, and he had a way about him that could be very convincing. A couple years here, and it will put you in good stead to go into private practice. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And that was about 8 years that I was in Miami.
And that was when you became clerk of the court?
That's when I became clerk of the court, and that was in 1980.
So you became clerk right about the time that the bankruptcy code went into effect, just shortly thereafter.
That's right. The bankruptcy code went into effect on October 1st of 1979, and right there at the beginning.
That was a whole new landscape for the bankruptcy court. They were suddenly independent.
That's
in
right.
many respects.
That's right.
Of the district court, and you did in fact have your own court unit.
That's right.
Now, as far as the NCBC, you were one of the founders.
I was right there at the beginning. I think the organizational meeting was called by some clerks, and I found out about it and went to that meeting, and that was the beginning of the NCBC.
Now, why did this group find it important to start this organization? What was their thinking as to why it was really needed?
Well, as you indicated before, this was a whole new landscape where the clerks were made independent clerks of court, the bankruptcy court unit. And a lot of us came from various backgrounds, some from other court units, some from the private sector, some from the legal sector. And we thought that this would be a good time to start an organization to promote professionalism in the bankruptcy court. And that's basically how it got started, with just a handful of people.
What was the organizational structure? How did you decide to make the organization run?
Again, those were the early days. We were sitting around a table and decided, okay, well, we have to do a nonprofit organization. And so one of the people decided to work on that and identify the state of incorporation. And then we kind of looked around at the table and said, well, who should be the president? And everybody kind of looked at Cliff Kirsch, and he was the clerk in New Jersey at the time. And Cliff, in his style, low-key style, very professional, he was deferred to as the president. And then we looked around the table, and there was Barbara Everly, and she had been in the system for quite some time, and so she was determined to be the vice president. And that's basically how it got started, and we went from there.
I know those formative years must have been a little chaotic. But what were the goals of the organization at that time?
Well, as I indicated, to promote professionalism among the court unit executives. Of course, we didn't have terms back then as court unit executives or unit executives. It was just clerk of the bankruptcy court. And to have the people who were in those positions, to attract them so we could sit down and discuss, common issues that we were facing, most of which was for recognition. Issues as to getting resources, because was a whole new thing. And the word went out to all the people that were in that position that were forming this organization, and actually a number of people responded very positively to that.
I know that the Federal Court Clerks Association was, of course, in existence at that time, and I get the feeling from what you're saying that the clerks of the new bankruptcy courts, I'm sure many of them were members of NCBC.
That's right, they were.
But probably were beginning to see that organization would not fulfill their needs anymore. Is that a fair statement?
Well, as you said, a number of people were members. They had been in existence for quite some time. But we felt that our focus as really a new group of people had to have a separate focus, and that organization was viewed as being in the situation where they had been in existence, had evolved into an organization that was not on the verge of growth as we were. We, of course, kept communication with that organization, and there was some dual membership. Felt that we really needed to have a separate organization.
What was it like in those early days?
Those early days, yes. The thought was, well, maybe we should have a conference sometime. Where can we get everybody together to have that? And as the years go by, the memory slips a little bit about where we had our first conference. But I know we had our first conference, and we had pretty good attendance. And for the number of clerks that there were, said, well, maybe we should have a newsletter. Who would like to do the newsletter? And I volunteered to do the newsletter, which turned out to be a one-page effort for the first few years. And that's how I started. And then, as time went by, when we had election of future officers, because we would have the vice president move up to the presidency, and then nomination for the other officers and things like that. So it was very, like any organization, those early days, everybody does what they can, and it was a very collegial group from the beginning, because we were all in the same boat, trying to start an office, get resources, and share information. And that was the fun thing about it, because everything that we did seemed to be new, and we started from the standpoint of being as creative as we could, because we didn't have any guidelines to go by. A lot of the judges were very busy with their organization, the court, and getting that up and everything. So and that was the other fortunate thing about this, is that a lot of the judges gave us a lot of leeway in what we could do, and actually, as they brought in clerks, brought in professional administrators, and that's what was nice, because you'd meet a new person and their background and everything, and they would add to the clerks group, and also to the organization, because then they came in, they didn't know anybody, so there was this organization. So it was a good building process.
Well, it sounds like in the early years, at least initially, the officers were more chosen than actually deciding to run.
More volunteers.
So did you at some point actually decide to run for president, or was it just you had been editor of the newsletter?
Right. Well, at that juncture, it was almost, it evolved, because when Barbara was president, Howard Beck emerged, as he had come from private practice, and was one of these individuals that just kind of a leader that just drew people to it. And so he was the logical next choice. And Howard and I got to be very good friends. And when he was elected and they were looking for a vice president, everybody kind of looked around, and I raised my hand and became the vice president. And again, those were very challenging years, and I told the story at the conference yesterday about our lobbying effort, where Barbara and Howard and I went to Washington, and that was a very critical period in the early years. At the same time, we were building up relationships with people within the AO, because we were a new organization at that time. We were in the bankruptcy division. They had not separated into a separate clerks division. So a number of us who were also leaders of the NCBC were also on the clerks advisory committee. And so we would meet as the NCBC, and then we would go to the meetings at the AO. So that was another way that we were able to organize, because we would use that meeting as one of our meetings.
All right. Well, a new organization and a new court. There must have been a lot of issues that you all tackled.
There were, and they were really interwoven with the issues of new clerk support in the court system. And because we were able to get together, we created a pretty collegial group that whatever came up in the clerk's office as an issue, we could get on the phone and call and find out from somebody else. That was before email and everything. And something as simple as, it wasn't simple, where we had the evolution of automation was from mag card machines, memory typewriters, and things like that. And the PC was just coming on the market, developed by IBM and some other computer makers. And some of us got together and said, how can we do this? And again, it was within the organization that we developed this concept of, there's this guy in Atlanta that knows something about this. Let's talk to him. So we talked to him, and he said that he could put together a network of PCs, and everybody's kind of going, okay. So we talked to the AO about that, and they were right in the mode of the central server and working on dumb terminals and things like that. So we came up with the concept of, okay, we want to do this, but how are we going to do this? And again, this was all NCBC core group developing this. And so we came up with the idea of sending in our AO19s, because you had to send in an AO19 for everything, whether it was typewriters or anything. You had to send in AO19. So we sent in a AO19 for memory typewriters or memory typewriter equivalents, not to exceed, I think at the time it was like $500 per memory typewriter. And with that, Ward Mundy was able to get, I know for the court in Miami, 10 leading edge computers. And he put together a program to network those computers. And we had a couple memory typewriters that could also be used as printers. So we put that together, and that became the first network program, and he entitled it BUMS, Bankruptcy Users Microcomputer System, because he had that sense of humor. And through the organization, through the clerks, the word got out. This is how you do it. And to do this. So a number of courts got the AO19s in. Interestingly, the person who was processing that in the AO at the time was Scott Little, who is a longtime chief deputy in New Jersey. And we still talk about those early days. So by the time that, again, the relationship with the AO, again, we're trying to establish our existence and our creativity and stuff like that. At some point in time, the AO kind of stopped that you can't do that anymore. But we had already had set up a network system. Again, spurred on by the same people that founded this organization.
For several years, it was in fact the bankruptcy clerks who were members of this organization. Now, how did the idea of allowing the deputy clerks to become members get on the table? Who was the one who proposed it, or were there several people? And just tell me a little bit about how that came about.
As we progressed and expanded our membership about as far as we could go with clerks, because there are only so many clerks of court, a couple things happened. Number one, we kind of looked around at each other and saw that we're getting tired. I mean, not tired, and not really burnt out, but we have built the organization as far as we can go at this time with our limited membership. And we had, by that time, had built up our staffs within the clerk's office, got additional resources, got familiarity with, the people that were there. And it was Richard Heltzel that, put forth the concept, well, maybe we better look at expanding this organization because we're limited. And the FCCA has open membership. So he was the one that really came up with that concept. And somehow, coincidentally, he was the elected vice president and was, the next one in line to become president. And as he said yesterday at the event, he considers that one of his best achievements during his tenure. And it really was, because then a whole new world opened up, because the deputy clerks had seen the clerks kind of involved in this, and they knew a little bit about it. But now to have membership in that at a relatively low price, and I think the initial one was like $10, and now it's still $15, and it was purposely kept at that level to allow the deputy clerks to come in. So then things just started building on
Now, I understand that that initial idea was not met with universal approbation.
that. There were some clerks that felt that, well, this is kind of a small, exclusive club, and we have these issues that we can discuss. How's this going to work with bringing the deputy clerks in? And there was some, there was some discussion among that, but obviously what prevailed was to expand the organization.
Now, during your term as president of the NCBC, what were some of the issues that came up before the membership, and how were they handled?
Well, probably the biggest issue that came up, again, to go along with all of this, where we had started out, in '80, and we were starting to grow. Then along came the Marathon Pipeline case. In '82, '83, it was decided, and suddenly the bankruptcy judges were no longer judges for a period. They were consultants because of some constitutional issues with the Marathon Pipeline case, and who could decide that case, which, the decision basically indicated that it had to be the district court and not a bankruptcy judge. And it actually challenged the existence of bankruptcy judges. And so during that time period, it came out that, okay, they won't be called bankruptcy judges, they will be called consultants. And they can't issue any orders. The district court judge has to issue the order. And even presiding at hearings, that was questionable. And so it came out all sorts of things, that there would be a district judge and bankruptcy judge sitting at hearings, or there were the consultant could hear the matter, similar to a special master, and then send to whatever their recommendations to the district court. And during that time period, a number of district courts looked upon that as, okay, well, then there's no separate bankruptcy clerk's office. Matter of fact, I got a call from the clerk of the district court that called me over and invited me or welcomed me to the management team. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And he indicated that, well, with this case, there'll be no more separate clerk's office. But I want you to know, I'm the type of manager that I give people the authority. So I listened to him, and I went back and talked to our chief judge, who wasn't happy with it, or our chief consultant, whatever it's called. And so he called the chief judge of the district court down there, and they were pretty good friends, and Judge Britton was very well respected in the community and by Judge King. And the next day I get a call from the clerk of the district court. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that this was only a temporary fix. Well, to remedy that, that's when the bankruptcy amendments of 1984 came in. And the provision that Judge Conte talked about that was in the 1979 legislation wasn't there. And so it was headed down the road where there wouldn't be a separate clerk's office. And then that's where we went to Washington. And it was at the same time, as part of that fix, the bankruptcy judges were trying to become Article III judges. That didn't pass in the 1984 amendments. But there was this provision that was placed in not the bankruptcy code, but one of the 28 USC 150 something sections.
It was 156.
And that said, the similar language that was in the 79, the bankruptcy code, that should the bankruptcy judges, because in the legislation it's called bankruptcy judges, determine the need for a separate clerk, they can certify to the circuit and a clerk will be appointed. And that little provision was so buried in there that Howard, who was the president at the time, got the call after the legislation had passed from someone within the administrative office that said, well, I guess there won't be a separate clerk's office anymore. And there needs to be a transition. And Howard said, you might want to look at 28 USC section 150, 156C. And there was a silence on the other end of the phone, shuffling the papers. And then I forget the term that the person used, but even before that call, the organization got together and put together a certification form and got it out to all the bankruptcy clerks and said, fill this out, have the judge sign it, and send it into the circuit. And that was done within a matter of a couple of days in most of the courts. And the circuit courts got it, and they, okay, the bankruptcy judge is certifying the need for a separate clerk. So they filed it. And before procedures could get out from the AO, most of the bankruptcy courts had already got that into the circuits. And here we are. I would say that is the biggest issue. That and the resources, getting the staff, building up relationships with the people within the AO, some of whom are still within the AO.
Yes.
And over the years, because of the creativity, the professional management, the doing things for the good of the system, doing things for the good of the bankruptcy judges, the bankruptcy clerks, and this organization that trailed right along with that, part of that, has really got some terrific recognition over the years.
Well, it certainly seemingly kind of began as an advocacy group
Very much so.
and has grown into also the educational group
That's right.
for the clerks. You've been a member throughout all these years.
Even as an emeritus member when I was with the Justice Department for 7 years, kept up my membership here.
How have you seen the organization change? We know it has grown. And what do you see as its strength right now?
Definitely founded on mutual interest, advocacy, fighting for existence, moving to expansion, education becoming a big focus because deputy clerks had not had the opportunity to be involved in different types of education. Sure, there were focused things that they were able to do, but not as a group to pick and choose education. Getting that understanding with the AO that these could be funded from court funds. Tremendous achievement. So advocacy, education, and then the next prong was service, to see what the members needed, provide those services, health benefits, the use of carryover sick leave and things like that. The service focus. So that's how the organization has evolved on those three prongs. Going forward, I think that stability with equal emphasis when needed. For instance, this conference obviously has evolved into the educational event of the year for bankruptcy clerks. The service part, groups working on what can we do for our members? How can we best serve them? The expansion of the one-page newsletter into now a very good document, setting up the circuit representatives and district representatives, getting news items in, the whole evolution of technology and the involvement in CMECF, that white paper, the work measurement study, identifying opportunities to provide input into the system. And going forward, like I said, I think emphasis on those items, more involvement from people to have the opportunity to serve, whether district representatives, circuit representatives, committee members. I think one of the opportunities, because not everybody can attend this because somebody has to stay home to mind the store, although I talked to our chief judge about that, said, why couldn't we, in connection with our COOP plan, maybe send everybody to the NCBC and then operate our office from there? What do you think? Well, that's a good thought, David. Hold on to that. So, in addition to that, perhaps a mid-year conference where you have the annual conference to where certain people can attend. But then you have a mid-year conference, perhaps people that didn't get the opportunity. Maybe pick and choose from the best programs and duplicate those at the mid-year conference. Then that would perhaps attract more people, because what I'm hearing from people in my office, well, I really want to go, but next year it's going to be in New Orleans, so I'll wait and go, there. And I really want to go, but this is not a good time or something like that. So if we could provide an additional opportunity to do that, I think the joint meetings with the FCCA, I think that is good. And I think we should continue those. Maybe a little more participation at the NCBJ meetings, if that could be done. I know that the president usually goes to that, but there may be an opportunity to perhaps getting some board members. Maybe it's increasing the presence, because the NCBJ has always been a big supporter of ours, and I think it will continue to be.
Well, those are fabulous ideas that will, I'm sure, be well received by the membership and hopefully implemented at some point in time. What do you see as the organization's greatest challenge going forward?
The greatest challenge, as I think in any organization, and in the clerk's office, is funding. funding for the programs, when times are good within funding for the clerk's offices, the opportunity to supplement attendance by members is there. When things are tight, then you don't have the attendance. So there has to be a way to fund the efforts of the organization in good times or tight times within the office. And I think the effort to get more people involved, show the benefits of this, perhaps have a mid-year meeting could very well build up among the membership that, even if the offices can't fund it, we're going to go anyway because this is a value. So I see that as one of the biggest challenges, the funding, and of course continuing to expand the organization. But if you provide good service, good advocacy, and good education, and the opportunity to participate, this organization will continue to grow because that's the culture of this organization.
What do you see in the future? Besides the challenges and what you've already talked about, where would you like to see this organization go? Where would you hope that it would go in the next few years?
I would like to see it possibly evolve similar to the way the American Bankruptcy Institute has evolved. And I think it can be done. One way and of course the ABI started out as a very small organization and grew and grew. And one of their concepts is to have regional conference. Now, just getting to 2 conferences would be a lot for the NCBC. But if it could work out to where, let's say, within a circuit, there's going to be a training effort put on by the circuit. Why couldn't that be an opportunity for the NCBC to have a presence at that? Said, okay, they're having this training here. The NCBC will be there at that training to make a presentation or to record it somehow. And technology, with YouTube and everything else, that could be done. Then that training session would reach out to all the other members. Okay, you can go to the NCBC and see the Third Circuit training on website development. Do it all through technology so that people could sit at their terminal, their laptops, their iPads or whatever, and just pull up that training and evolve not only with the physical presence, physical seminars, but the electronic seminars too. And I see that more and more.
Are you hopeful for the organization?
I'm the eternal optimist, and like some of the sessions here, what the mind can conceive and the heart believe you can achieve, and just the visualization and seeing this organization in the future. It's going to be great future for this organization, and I want to be part of it. Now, my years are coming to an end as far as clerk of court. They'd say, well, when are you going to retire? I'd say 10 years. When are you going to retire? 10 years. When are you going to retire? 10 years. Well, I do some calculations, and maybe we'll move that down to 5 now. But I think there's also a real opportunity for the people that leave the bankruptcy court system to have a component of this organization, to retain that institutional knowledge in the way of a section for former clerk's office employees, not only clerks of court, but everybody, and use that as mentoring for the new people who come in. I also think that there's an opportunity for bringing in not only court employees, but those entities that deal with the court, paralegals in law offices that deal with bankruptcy. They would love to have the opportunity to connect with the people in this organization on an informal basis. I mean, there's always that line. But if that could be opened up as an associate, as part of the associate membership, that's another way this organization can grow.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It has indeed.